Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining and coming to the October meeting. I know Halloween's coming up, so maybe we were a little busy, but I'm glad we could make it. I'm going to pull up my presentation here to start. And we should all be able to see that. So again, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to start here. Again, if you just joined, feel free to throw in your name, affiliation. And again, if it's your first time, throw any special interests into the chat there. And then I just want to take some time introduce our work group co-chairs, starting with Dr. Rich Christiana. Do you want to jump on and say hi?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Rich Christiana. I'm Associate Professor of Public Health at Appalachian State University.
Perfect. Next is going to be Dr. Jeanette Gestat.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So glad to have you here. Co-lead at Tulane University in New Orleans. And yeah, been with PAPREN a long time, so I'm happy to see some new faces and welcome everyone here.
Absolutely. And then was Sandy able to join? Let's check real
so.
quick. I don't see her. Our third co-chair here is going to be Sandy Slater. She's at the Concordia University of Wisconsin there. She may be joining us a little later. And now comes a fun time for me. I have been the fellow for the past year. It has been such a great opportunity to work with people of like-mindedness and an opportunity to kind of expand my learning and knowledge. But now I get to pass that off, and I'm proud to introduce our new fellow who's joining us for the first time this month. It's going to be Emily Kaufman. She's currently pursuing her MPH at George Washington University, graduating in December. So early congratulations on that. She has a concentration in climate change and health, and then her email is on the screen, and we'll make sure to get it out as well here. So I'm going to let her take over here and take over the responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, wait, before she starts, I just want to say welcome, Emily. We're so glad to have you. I know you've already met Sandy, I believe, right? But yeah. But you haven't met Rich and myself, so we wanted to say thank you, and please feel free to get involved to whatever extent that you're able and want to. And this is for everyone as well, because we have a number of different projects going on. This coming year, so we can think about brainstorming for new projects. And I just got a notice that my internet was unstable. I don't know if I cut off anywhere there, so sorry. A little bit. Okay.
Pause just for a moment, but we could hear you.
Get the gist of it. All right. Thank you. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Gestat, and I appreciate the informal passing of the torch. And I'm really excited to be here, part of this group for the next year or so. If I'm going to bring this up later on, but in the meantime, as we transition, if anyone wants to reach out to me directly for any specific interests or ideas for this meeting on a monthly basis moving forward, I'm happy to hear some of your insights. Like Andy said, I have a concentration in climate change and health, so I'm really interested in how green spaces can form a mitigation or adaptation strategy to combat the effects of climate change, both in rural and urban places. And then, so that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for, but I know not everyone has that interest. And so I want to kind of make sure that we're covering the full extent of everyone's research interests and areas of expertise.
And not just research only, but we also investigate, what's going on with policy, and then we hear from speakers about different projects and programs that have been all around the parks and green space area. We've put up notices responding to Federal Register requests for information from the White House, at the national level. We look at policies statewide and nationally, and hear from practitioners all over the country, such as many of you are as well as do research in those areas as well. I don't know, Rich, you wanted to add anything? I think we have a number of new people on the meeting today.
I can't think of anything to add.
Okay, well, great. All right. We'll get on with our speaker. I don't know, Emily, did you have anything else, Emily?
That's all I had right now. I'm based in Delaware, and so I'm kind of in this unique area where I'm between Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, um, and yeah, so I'm excited to connect with this national group.
Oh, and thanks for putting in the chat, Terry, about what PAPREN stands for. And check out the main webpage. This is a subgroup meeting of PAPREN, the Parks and Green Space Work Group. We also have the regular sort of network meeting, the PAPREN meetings once a month. And then there's those meetings are divided up between alternating between grand rounds when we have a presentation speaker, and then network meetings where we have more updates and in-house thing as well. Sometimes a member is presenting. So we do a number of different things. And this work group is specifically to deal with areas around physical activity, policy research around parks and green spaces.
For that. All right. So just as an overview of what we're going to cover today, we're going to have a lovely presentation with Dr. Nadereh Pourat. After that, we have time for a Q&A, project updates with any new project proposals. So we want to hear from you. We'll sort of open it up with the time that we have left for any other announcements, and then reminders of upcoming meetings for PAPREN overall and for this work group. So I will introduce Dr. Nadereh Pourat. She is the primary investigator of evaluation at the LA County's Parks After Dark program. Parks After Dark is a Los Angeles County initiative led by the Department of Parks and Recreation in partnership with other county departments and community-based organizations. Parks After Dark is implemented in Los Angeles County areas with high levels of violence, obesity, and economic hardship. 34 Department of Recreation, Parks and Recreation parks hosted Parks After Dark between June and August 2022. And that was after a 2-year halt in programming because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Parks After Dark was offered 3 nights a week for 8 weeks on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday evenings. And with that, I will let Dr. Pourat take it from here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Emily. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me for a second while I did not prepare. All right, so everybody can see the screen?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode though. Oh, there it is.
Oh, excellent. All right, thank you. Thanks, Emily, for providing all the details. I just realized, oh, oops, some of those interesting details about exactly how the program was implemented was not included, but you just described them. So I'm a professor at UCLA Fielding School of Public Health, and we have been partnering with the LA County evaluating this really interesting program that has been going on for quite a few years. So these are the co-authors on the latest report that we just published. And as Emily mentioned, the program it's a partnership of multiple departments within the county, and also there are community partners that participate in this program. Of course, I do want to say that I do have 2 of my colleagues, Leanne Haley and Brunel Masta, that worked on the report with me, as well as our colleague at Parks and Recreation, Mercy Santos, who's also here listening in, and they will jump in response to questions and answers when the presentation's over. So very briefly, the program started in 2010, so it's been ongoing for quite a while, and then parks have joined over time. So it has expanded from its original few parks to the 34 that we had this past year. There are multiple goals for the program, as you can see here. Obviously, in response to the violence, there's interest in increasing safety, promoting collaboration across different communities and within the county as well. Social cohesion, family well-being, major goals, and provision of programming obviously is the vehicle mechanism that pulls everything together, but also increasing physical activity that hopefully will lead to decreased chronic illness. A newer goal is the positive youth development that is actually articulated now, and then of course cost savings, which is the hope. And you can see from the logic model exactly what are the different partners that are involved within the county and elsewhere, the type of programming that is offered to promote well-being, including sports, different types of entertainment, for example, educational activities, teen clubs, and resource fairs. So a lot of different things going on during the program, with some underlying variation by park, but there are a lot of, over time, more consistent programming. A lot of, you can see the outcomes that are anticipated from the program, some shorter in duration, so more immediate, and some longer term benefits. Of the longer term benefits, particularly, helping to reduce burden of disease, reducing crime, and improving well-being, etc. The evaluation questions, of course, we try to answer all the major goals of PAD in the evaluation, and we have a number of data sources. All of the program staff at parks conduct surveys of participants every year. We also obtain crime data from LA County Department of the Sheriff's Department, as well as the Los Angeles Police Department, because there are two different departments that collect these information. And we conduct key informant surveys and interviews with all of the individuals that are participating and some of the partners. And then we do get administrative data about the program itself, such as attendance and the type of programming, etc. So I'm going to go over some of the high level, obviously, analysis of the surveys. I don't mention that here, but that's what we do as well. We analyze the attendance data, we analyze the survey data, and report all of that information. But two or three more involved activities. One of them is trying to assess the physical activity impact of PAD on health and well-being, and especially reduction of chronic disease burden. And so we are using the integrated transport and health impacts model that has been developed. We've been using it for several years. I believe it was recently updated, where it does estimate. So there are inputs that you have to put in, and at the very end, you obtain information on the potential impact of increased physical activity on disease burden. We use the participant data to figure out the routine or baseline activities that individuals have engaged in, as well as what they engaged in during PAD. And then we use also the administrative data on the number of people that attended and how long were each of the activities. And then the model determines then we estimate how much of the activity is attributable to PAD, and then the model estimates the amount of expenditures. And I'll provide a little bit more data on this in a minute. In terms of the crime data, we identify the comparison parks in LA County that have similar geographic and population characteristics. It is quite challenging. We've spent a lot of time trying to do that, because in these kinds of programs where you're trying to approach or you're trying to do programming in parks that are most affected by the criteria you're interested in, as a consequence, the parks that remain to be included as comparison are not necessarily representative. So that's a significant challenge for us, and we work really hard trying to do the best we can with the reality of similar evaluations. You know, this is always the case when you do these kind of interventions for very specific purposes. So what we do is that we identify for all of the intervention parks and the comparison parks, we use a 1 mile radius. And then we identify all the census tracts within that area. And then we identify the crimes that were reported in each of those areas. And we use those information to then conduct difference in difference models that determine the reduction in crime that is attributable to PAD, and then I mean that occurs, the crime that is occurring in each of the area, and then the reduction in crime that is likely attributable to PAD. And then when it comes to cost savings, we do use item, as I said, estimates cost savings associated with the with selected health conditions. And then we also use the available data from the literature on costs associated with criminal justice system. The challenge that we've had consistently, and we haven't really been able to, is that we haven't been able to find costs associated with Part 2 crimes. So if you're familiar with crime data, it includes Part 1 crimes are the ones that are including murder, grand theft, assault, manslaughter, you know, really high level crimes. And then the more minor types of crimes are Part 2 crimes. And it's much harder, it has been difficult for us to identify costs associated with Part 2 crimes. So it's a gap or a caveat in our analysis. A little bit of information about the program. This year we had a over 137,000 visits to the parks. And then our estimates show, or the survey data show, about 39% of the participants were ages 26 to 39, 65% females, 62% Latinx. We also identified that 80% of the participants said they actually regularly attend these parks. So, and then we did ask them about family orientation, whether they're attending with children. Of course, these during PAD, the attendance of children is quite high. And we asked individuals about their satisfaction with their experience at PAD, and that's always been high. Most of them said they would attend PAD again, and they would recommend PAD to others. A little bit about the reduction in chronic disease burden. So we first, measure increased physical activity, and a lot of as I noted a minute ago, a lot of the attendees say that they do participate in PAD and at parks regularly, but they also participated in the physical activities at PAD. And then a number of them were saying that they are engaging in PAD physical activity at least once a week. That's 69%. So using that information, we then, when we inputted the data in the model, we had 11 years increase in life expectancy and 11 fewer years of disability. We can get, if people are curious, we can talk about the assumptions that we have to make. As you can imagine, the model is not developed for us. It's a model that's developed for a broader analysis. So we have to make assumptions when we enter the data about how much physical activity, for example, people are doing regularly, and whether or not the amount of activity that they engaged in at PAD continues throughout the year. So there are quite a few assumptions. And then a little bit more information here you can see about the participation in physical activity by type. So we do distinguish between the, individuals that are participating in team sports, for example, walking clubs or swimming and or exercise classes. Moving on a little bit to the reduction in community violence and increased feelings of safety. The survey asks a lot of questions about the participants about whether or not they feel safe at PAD. What are the reasons that attribute to their feelings of safety at PAD? And of course, the presence of sheriff deputies in these parks is actually quite a plus. It does increase the feelings of safety. When you contrast what they say about feeling safe at PAD with what they would say about their own communities, you could see actually quite a significant differential. About 55% will say that they are feeling, they're not feeling safe in their neighborhood, but they're feeling safe at PAD. So we do a lot of this kind of analysis to understand what people are saying about how it helps. Apart from the sheriff deputies, of course, the presence of a lot of park staff during these events is a plus. The atmosphere, and the park environment, whether or not all the facilities are operational, there's adequate lighting, and those kinds of things. I'm going to jump to our estimates of crimes avoided so that you could see we do these calculations by groups of parks because our aim every year, not only we're looking at the year, the current data, but we're also looking back at these estimates over time because the department is particularly interested in looking at cumulative change over time in these parks. And so parks that have been operational, for example, from the beginning, we look at them separately from those parks that most recently joined. So this is what I'm talking about. So how it changes and then how it has changed. So you cannot expect necessarily that a change or reduction in crime is likely to always stay consistent. And there's a continuous reduction over time. So we measure that just to see what is going on. And then we do add the overall cumulative change, and we arrive at a reduction of 115 for part 1. And then we do the same for part 2 crimes, and you can still see variations in parks, in groups of parks, depending on when they joined PAD. And in terms of part 2 crimes, we have 74. So moving on to the estimated cost savings, we do have an estimated chronic disease costs avoided from the item model. This year, our estimate was nearly 1.5 million. The part 1 crimes, of course, are because of the severity of those crimes, costs associated with those are greater therefore, the reduction in crime is likely to end up with a much greater reduction in the costs associated with these types of criminal justice costs. And total, we arrived at about 11.4 million reduction. And then we took out the amount that is associated with the amount of PAD budget, and we have roughly 8 million in estimated cost savings. Again, just remind you that we are making quite a lot of assumptions when we arrive at these costs. So I'm sure people put their mind to it. We could debate these for a long time. So based on the report, which I'm only presenting to selected sections, there's a lot of implications or recommendations that we've had. We obviously understand that the attendance of the deputy sheriffs at parks is really important, but also how they behave while they're there, how they engage with the community does matter. So we continue to recommend that sheriff deputies engage with the community while they're there. They're not sitting in their cars, they're walking around. Sometimes they participate in the sports activities. They walk around, talk to people. I remember one year they actually had a car, one of the police cars in the park, and they would allow the kids to look around and climb in, and sort of kind of activities that break some of that barrier between the police and the community for which they are trying to ensure safety. Then there's a lot of interest in some of the activities. Actually, I'm jumping forward. So one of the other recommendations is that the planning and convening of partners actually happens earlier, but also continues. Those continued conversations throughout the year also matter. So that's another recommendation. And a lot of this is from the conversations that we're having with all of the different key informants. That includes the park staff and county staff and sheriff deputies, as well as other partners. So this is a call to engage more. Promoting diversity and inclusion in PAD activities so that they actually mirror the communities and the community interests and needs. So this is we're also proposing that there is more thought given to the kind of activities that are really meaningful to the community and promote engagement. Promoting participation in more outreach strategies depending on the parks where they are located, and how how large they are, etc. Sometimes it's very challenging for some of the parks that are perhaps not on a major street. There are parks that could be actually off the beaten track, and they don't necessarily attract attention as people are driving by. In those parks, they have to do a lot more to outreach to the community, let people know that the programming is happening. And so the outreach really matters to promote attendance and participation. And finally, one of the things that the county actually has been trying to do is promoting, providing more popular programming, as well as providing more programming throughout the year. So over time, there has been 2 additional dates where PAD programming happens. One of it is during spring break. The other one is during winter break, and it's programming that is also, for example, coinciding with Easter during spring break, or themed that way. And then winter activities, for example, including bringing snow for kids to play around. We're in LA County, remember? So depending on the time of year, you either have really, depending on the weather, you might have warm, you might have cool, but snow is not something that anybody can experience here. So that actually was a huge attraction this past year, that where kids were just playing with the snow. So those kinds of additional programming have been really important, as well as the providing more opportunities for the parks to do more programming year round. For example, providing physical activity opportunities, classes in parks really matter to these communities where they may not have the resources individually to go and join a gym, for example. I believe this is the last. Please go ahead, look at our publications. We do have a report. We have a really nice evaluation brief that provides the information in easy to read format. And so I'm going to stop sharing and hear from you whether or not you had any questions.
Thank you
so
for
much,
this,
Dr. Pourat.
Oh yeah, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Yeah, I think there's a few questions in the chat. I think someone's trying to answer them too. I guess I'll start off before we read some of these questions. How are the parks chosen to participate in the PAD program?
That is an excellent question. Mercy, are you are here? Would you like to answer that question?
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So the parks are chosen based on the department's a few things, but based on the department's North Star, which is our parks needs assessment. It's also on our website. It's a very comprehensive document that guides our Measure A initiative, among other things, but also looks at factors around some of the chronicity issues around obesity that were talked about, the access to parks and play spaces, green space is another factor in it. And of course, we also look at other demographic or through our anti-racist and violence prevention strategies, violence and housing and other indicators within the communities where the parks exist at. We also work closely with our Office of Violence Prevention and look at our violence prevention scores in the county, and all taken into account. Those are where Parks After Dark was launched, and then how it was expanded to the 34 park sites. I think our last expansion was in about 2 years ago. So that's the last time we've been able to add a park site. And I'll just add that last year was the first full year where we received full funding to operate the 3 editions of PAD, which was a significant game changer for the program. In years prior, the program was funded through various grants and from other resources from other county departments. So a lot of different funds were pulled together with some general fund dollars, but now there's a full $10 million commitment from LA County CEO and Board of Supervisors to provide ongoing funding for PAD, as well as an ongoing grant from the Department of Probation, who's very interested in making sure that youth at promise and their families have access to this program in their communities.
Thanks, Mercy. There's a couple of important considerations. I believe there's a minimal requirement that there is a green space, an open green space, because the county has additional areas that are considered parks, but they're not necessarily able to hold programming at all of the spaces. So that's just the criteria for selection of some of these parks as well. And I must say that I would be interested to hear whether others have seen similar programming elsewhere, but this is the value of this programming cannot be underestimated beyond the dollars and numbers and things like that. I think when we do go and walk around during the programs, you do really understand how such programming can contribute to a community.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was a wonderful presentation. I had kind of a question on the sheriff's department and kind of those people y'all had brought in to make people feel a little bit more safe. Did you guys look at where those sheriffs were, if they were like living in the county, if they were a part of that community, or if they were living outside of the county and coming in? Because I know having that law enforcement presence when they feel like they're a part of the community because they live in that community, they often see better outcomes with crime as well. So did you look at that at all, where that law enforcement was coming from?
I think it's the department. So they have to be LA County Sheriff deputies, right? So you're talking about county-wide.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they try to have local, but it doesn't always work out because the need is there's not necessarily deputies within the same area. I don't know, Mercy, do you know more? And I think Leanne might have some additional information because she's the one that conducts the interviews with the sheriff deputies.
Yeah, so well, one, I would acknowledge that the county is over 4,000 square miles.
Right,
So
it's very large.
Very big. So I think that's one thing to consider. We do not have enough sheriffs that can work their assignment, plus take on parks after dark, because we place 2 sheriffs at each park site to cover. So we actually have to, we work with our Parks Bureau, who's underneath our director in our department, but also kind of coexists under the sheriff's department. And they work our parks, so they know our park system and have those relationships. But we also have to bring in people who maybe work in other units within the sheriff's department who may have an affinity to the area or the community. But what will happen that I see very often is that even though they may work in another unit within the sheriff's department and not Parks Bureau, they may know that community a little bit more, and they may ask for continuous placement in the same communities because they enjoy working. So we do get a lot of narratives about people and their interaction with sheriffs and relationships that they have with the immediate community. And so there are really positive, not only interactions going on, but also just talking about safety in the neighborhood. Because if you look at the data, people feel safe coming to PAD, but they don't necessarily feel safe in their neighborhood.
Right.
So I'll turn it over to Leah to see if she has any more insights.
Yeah, sorry, I was responding to some of the questions in the chat around the Parks Bureau. But anecdotally, like, sheriff deputies do believe that PAD improves relationships with community members and creates a more positive perception of sheriff deputies. As we've kind of spoken to, many of these individuals who are staffed at PAD events do have familiarity with the parks because they are part of the Parks Bureau.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, when you do talk to them, I have talked to some of them. If they are, if I can see them, they're standing there. They do know the parks. If this is their usual patrol, they do know the atmosphere. They do know what's happening. We were talking about the type of crimes that they normally see at the park, and they have a lot of perspective. So not always, but a lot of them do are regulars.
There's a question in the chat about, does the Parks Bureau have its own police or security officers? I don't know if that was previously answered.
Parks Bureau is the law enforcement under the sheriff's department for parks, and we maintain an MOU. So we work directly with sheriffs, same sworn sheriffs. They could go anywhere they wanted in the sheriff's unit, but they choose to work within the Parks Bureau division within the LA County Sheriff's Department. And they have different sergeants, lieutenants, security officers, and kind of their own command structure as well too.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I thought this was really interesting, tying in the crime data to physical activity. And I'm wondering if in your logic model, that's what you were kind of thinking what was going to happen, or your hypothesis, and sort of the reason behind the parks after dark idea. And I'm just thinking, like, was that the basis for setting up programming after it gets dark to reduce crime in the neighborhood? Was that the thinking, or was it to provide physical activity at a later date because that's when people in this neighborhood could go to the park and engage in physical activity?
You talking about the timing, Emily?
Yes.
Why
Yeah,
choose
so
the evening?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think Mercy, of course, would be able to talk about that in depth. The program is designed particularly for the summer, which was where the program started, is because a lot of the kids are out of school. And when the kids are out of school and they don't have opportunities to engage in positive activities, they could get involved or with not very positive activities. Gang, reduction in gang activity was one of the major goals of the program from the early on. So in the summer evenings, obviously parents are home as well, and they can participate in the activities. So that's another reason for choosing summer evenings. Mercy, you want to add to that?
Yeah, evenings in general, with the exception of winter parks after dark, was exactly that. It's designed when young people are out of school, and knowing that, obviously law enforcement is invited to become a part or a partner in the event, as well as our intervention team and our staff, because people don't always feel safe in their neighborhood coming to parks, right? And in the evening. And so this infrastructure was all built really to make sure that families who may be living in communities experiencing high levels of trauma, South LA, East LA, that there would be a place with no barriers to participation, or with barriers removed, so that you can read the report and you can hear a lot of stories about how kids were able to come to the park and get their first job, youth at work, through Parks After Dark. I mean, it has a lot of different tentacles. Or they were able to, they talk about how much more they can feel safe building time with their family. We heard a story when we were at a park last summer in South LA where grandma filled the van up with the last $25 she had, but she knew she could take her grandkids to the park, and they all got out of the car and had dinner and watched a movie and played games and participated in sports, and just countless experiences that you hear and circumstances that you hear about how it's able to remove barriers, and how people have really come to now at this point turning 14 grow up in their parks by having this experience and having it shape their lives and their families' lives in really deep ways. And so the human development outcomes are very strong, and cascade into other parts of their park experience throughout the year as well too.
Yeah, there is food. There's food. There's food. There is entertainment. I think if you are familiar, when you think about an under-resourced community, and now you have this opportunity to go there to eat, to have some entertainment, to play free without worrying about the kids. I do remember one of the parks we were talking about how the teens in the area are there every night. they're coming in, they're eating a little bit, they're, playing, participating. There's just, when you don't have those opportunities and this opportunity is available, it means a lot.
So were there parks already had the facilities for the lights? The lights were already there in the parks, and now the programming's added, or did the part of the funding of the program build the infrastructure to add the lights?
I can answer that. So we have lights already in many of these parks, because these parks have a lot of amenities. So they may have aquatics facilities. They may have athletic fields and just general park lighting. So the parks are already well lit. Have we continued to enhance lighting? Absolutely. Last summer, we had a large initiative where we were able to add actual lights into our pools. So we used to not be able to have our pools open until 10. They used to close at, I think, 8 o'clock. And actually our aquatics participation, I think we have 24 aquatics facilities in PAD, doubled, because we were able to add lights so that evening swim could go into well into the evening of 10 p.m., which was a huge benefit for another, again, physical activity opportunity, as well as cohesion activity, because not only were they able to enjoy, adult or youth basketball or sports, what have you, but they were also able to take more advantage of our aquatics facilities as part of the programming.
Great. I think we have time for one or two more questions, if there's anything else that anyone is curious about.
Russ was interested in some of the perceptions on making those estimates for cost savings and whatnot. Do you have details on that?
Do you want to reframe your question?
Russ mentioned, would love to learn more about the assumptions made to estimate savings. Is there more information in the report on that? And can we link to the report?
Yeah, we can definitely link the report. I invite you to look at it, because it does get quite detailed. But I think there are more assumptions that go into the item, and that's not necessarily all of the model is essentially saying, depending on the level of participation, what is the reduction in disability, what's the reduction in life expectancy. I mean, that model by itself makes a lot of assumptions. The kind of assumptions that we have to make is the level of activity, and whether or not that level of activity goes on, how long does it go on, those kinds of details. I don't believe we make, we do make assumptions when it comes to the crime analysis, because we are saying that because of the increased safety during the time that PAD is operating, that perception of safety remains with individuals, and that also the reduction in crime is, if a park is patrolled more often by the sheriff deputies, or there are a lot of parents and other people are around more often, that reduces the level of crime in those parks. We are very well aware that attributing Part 1 crimes is a little bit more tricky, because, they are very serious crimes. The kind of crimes that are more frequent are actually Part 2 crimes, right? They're the kind of misdemeanors, or like breaking into cars, theft, those kind of things are more frequent. But as I told you, we are not able to get cost estimates for those. So I invite you to look. You can see how we do the calculations, and should you have any thoughts that you think are going to help us, please feel free to send us an email.
Yes, and you can also reach out to me, and I can filter any questions back to the team. Thank you so much, Dr. Pourat and Leanne, and the rest of your team at UCLA for this great presentation. I really enjoyed it. So we will wrap up our meeting with a few final announcements. This is also your opportunity to share any updates that you have with us. Can you see my screen? It's loading. There it is. So just a reminder to please reach out to me with topics, research, programs that you want to hear about. Again, it doesn't have to be academic research. It can be cool and interesting things that you're learning more about in the green space and physical activity arena. So my email is there. I can also post it in the chat in a moment. And then any updates on current projects. So I want to open up the floor to see if there's anyone that has any current projects that have updates, or have a new stage where we can bring in new members to help. So this is our opportunity to network and ask for help from each other. Yes, I see your hand raised, Robbie. You can go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted there. Had a couple things I wanted to just mention. One is that the call for papers is out now for the Active Living Conference, which is going to be March. I had the dates here. It's like the 25th-ish, around in there. I meant to write those down. But the call for papers is out for Active Living Conference. The deadline on that is November 17th. And then just mark your calendar for next year, the next Shift conference, which we're going to look at new names, but it's the next evolution of Shift, which we just had a great Shift conference in Bend, Oregon. But the next year's will be in San Antonio in November. So there are a couple announcements there I wanted to get out.
The Active Living Conference is March 25th to the 28th.
Yeah.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee, yes.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have anything?
I put the link to the conference there with the dates as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I can also include that in the recap email.
Good. And I'll give a shout out to Russ Carson while he's here, because I believe that their Playcore is one of the sponsors for both conferences, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we're the champion sponsor this coming Active Living Conference, since it's in our backyard.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Excited to really showcase Chattanooga and how it's trying to become a national city in a park.
Cool.
Super exciting. Hope you all can make it.
Looking forward to it. It's the 20th year.
Oh yeah, party time.
Anyone else have anything they want to spotlight or shout out?
Just wanted to ask if anybody was going to be attending the APHA conference November, a couple weeks, November 13th, 12th to the 15th. Anybody? It's in Atlanta. Nope. Okay.
I guess you're going, huh?
I'm going, yeah. I got to do an exhibitor booth because we just started an MPH program at App State. So.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments about open mic? Or sorry. Anything else that anyone has to share? Can be upcoming. Yes, Terry Horton.
While we're talking about meetings, I'm just going to drop the link for the academic consortium on integrative health and medicine, which unfortunately is happening at about the same time as active living, but they're taking an increased interest in parks and green space. They've got for the last couple of years, we've had a special interest group on parks and green space. So check out the academic consortium.
Well, we are at time or overtime, so I wanted to thank everybody. I do think we need to think about a project for this coming year. So if anybody has ideas for projects for our work group, get those going, and maybe we can talk about those at the next meeting. And Emily, our next
Absolutely.
meeting is up on the screen there, right?
Yep. Yeah, it'll be November 27th. Same time, same place. Well, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
everybody.
participating, and you can look for my email recap and details about our next meeting in November.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.